to sort of get you on with it being our Equality and Diversity Month within the college. And you do normally come in and do lots of things with us during this month. And I know you come in to do some live tutorial sessions with us, but I just thought it'd be good, you know, to come on, raise some awareness and just sort of get your story really. So if you just want to introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about like your story of coming into the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, no problem. My name's Andy Train. Normally I would say at that point I'm Andy Train, I do training. I'm employed. I guess most people know me, well, it depends what you know me for, because some people know me for pride stuff, of which has kind of been a very important part of my life for nearly 20 years now, which sounds a bit scary. Some people know me from nursing, because that's kind of why I went from school into college and then into what was Hull District School of Nursing, and then became and then as I was there, the Hull District School of Nursing, which sounds very old-fashioned, became Humberside College of Health.
Much more professional.
And then it was taken into the university, and so as I finished, it became part of, and is still rightly so, part of the university, and all that kind of entails with health and training the future doctors, nurses, and other allied healthcare professionals of the future, which is great. So I started off life as a nurse, and then sort of movement within the nursing profession at the time was either, if you wanted to progress, you had to become a manager. So it was just starting to think about things like nurse practitioners and consultants as nurses, that within the profession you could do that. But I eventually moved from management because I realised that being a manager, you can't be everybody's friend. No, not all the time. And but I had some great experiences, and I worked rurally in Driffield and met some wonderful people and did some amazing things. And then sort of sideways stepped into the world of training. And then whilst that progressed, and actually that's when I came out, was when certain things in my life, it's really odd. It's almost as if certain things had to happen in a certain order or a certain way, and the stars had to align and all of those things, for me to realise that actually things weren't completely right in my world. So although I had what seemed to be on the outside of it perfectly good, sort of existence, family, married to a woman, baby daughter, the house, the car, the job, the da-da-da-da-da, is that all? Is that all? And then realizing quite quickly, there was a lot of other pressures, things like, Queer as Folk came on TV, and it was like, there were things cropping up, and I just felt there was something not quite right. And that's when I kind of realized in conversations with people like counsellors and others that perhaps I wasn't as straight as I thought I was. Or thought that I could, listen to me now, thought I could choose sexuality. How
old were you at that point, Andy?
I was 32.
Right, okay.
So my American friends call it gay with delay. And it was a pretty, I can laugh now, and it was a pretty dark time, and I'm glad I got through it with help and support. And I realised that wouldn't have been possible on my own. And I can kind of see how, looking back as a younger person, that I was kind of aware of myself, if you like, at about the age of about 15. I know a lot of younger people are aware fairly early on. Gender-wise, I've always been happy with my gender identity. I identify as a guy. That's me. I've always been happy to be a boy, but I appreciate that from a fairly early age, and they normally say about 6 or 7, you really have a sense usually of kind of who you are in that way. And it is a bit frustrating when we kind of like stereotype, we say boys play with boys toys and blue things, and girls play with girl things, and pink, and we kind of go that. And I just think that the all the colours of the rainbow should be available to everybody, and it's quite a challenge sometimes, but so I've kind of known that. And I think that for me it was the fact there weren't many organisations locally, and we've seen over, I would say, in that time, just a massive increase of awareness and opportunities and chances and support out there for everybody. Whereas when I first came out, there were 3 groups really in what I would call the Hull and East Riding area that supported people. One was a youth group at the Warren called Shout, which was amazing and still is. At the university, as part of the Students' Union, they have a society for LGBT plus students, full-time students and otherwise, there at the university, and of course the LGBT Forum, which kind of had just started, as had the Pride in Hull. And that first one was 2002. So, and I was actually there at the first one, but not out, not even aware of it. It was kind of still that time of, who am I? You know, what is going on?
Yeah.
I thought I was, you know, me kind of thing, and then realised I wasn't perhaps me as I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, just sort of touching on Pride, and one of my questions for you was, have you sort of seen a difference in Pride in those 20 years that you have been involved in it? You know, do you feel it's more of a celebration now? You know, I see Pride as you know, it's a big celebration, and it's, you know, I love to get involved in anything, you know, Pride related. And I was so upset when our Pride event last year couldn't go ahead because of lockdown, and I was super excited about it. But do you feel, because you've been in it obviously a lot, you've been involved in it for a lot of your life, do you see a difference, like a shift now to what it was? Like, how was it those 20 years ago?
I think even more so. I think when the first Pride started in the UK in the 70s, it definitely, and I know again back to my American cousins and the way the movement kind of started in New York, and it was exciting to be there during that year of the 50th celebration in 2019. It was just like being on the street where it all began, and in the Stonewall Inn, actually being in the Stonewall Inn, having a drink and being in there, and kind of like, wow, 50 years to the day.
Yeah.
We were there, you know, and just sort of listening to people who actually were there when this first thing happened. More of a protest, more of a march.
Yeah.
More of a kind of challenging the status quo and challenging about rights that weren't there for people. The fact that we discriminated against and bullied and you know, treated very badly and cruelly by society, and there were no protections there. You know, you were out on your own. And then I think as things like the HIV and AIDS sort of, you know, crisis kind of like started and emerged and was kind of the beginning of a scary period of time for a horrible, cruel disease, you know, that attacks people through nobody's fault. It's just kind of horrible in there. You know, how that kind of got momentum. So I think 80s into the 90s was certainly for the movement more in that kind of wanting to claim the right to exist and the right to be your authentic true self. And organisations gaining strength and momentum and support, and all the organisations we have and all the prides. I mean, to think that we now have over 200 Pride opportunities in the United Kingdom, and I'm doing some work with our friends in Ireland as well, because we have a UK Pride Organisers Network, which is a support network for UK Prides, but they're starting, and just recently been on a call with them. It's only a year ago since we first met with a lot of their prides over in Ireland, and that includes Northern Ireland as well as the Republic. And again, you know, wanting to set up their support network for Ireland prides, and so that they can work together and support each other and do more, and we are stronger together, and that's really what Pride does. But Pride still has an element of support, and there are lots of unions, organisations. East Riding College, you know, there are lots of people who come to Pride who are there to say, this is us, this is what we do, and we stand with you, we're allies, we're proud, and we have policies and procedures and things that support staff and students and visitors, and you can be yourself, and you are welcome, and you are safe. And it's really wonderful to see how more and more organisations, more and more companies, more and more places have decided to do that in order that people can flourish. Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, that's something that I love about the college, is that everybody's welcome. You know, there's no label, and for me especially, it's just everybody's welcome, and I just enjoy getting to know everybody. And you know, that's something that I get from you an awful lot, is when you come into the college, I love the way that the students, you know, recognise you and come and they're intrigued by you, you know, they're intrigued by your different outfits that you come in, you know, it's like, it's almost like, oh, what's Andy going to be dressed as today, you know, we love that, and it's so good, and I'm so glad that I work in a place that is so welcoming to everybody, and it's so good. So just, we touched upon it just a little bit there, but there's still some struggles that obviously young people still face in regards to the way that they feel, whether they feel that they can come out to families, friends, you know, peers. Do you think that there will always sort of be a small number of people that cause problems for the LGBTQ plus community, or do you think that hopefully, I think it's probably naive us to think that one day everybody will just accept it, but do you think that there's always going to be sort of that stigma in regards to that community?
I think it's down to individuals and choice. I always say when I'm doing the talks, you can change the laws, you can make the rules right, you can create an environment where people can be, you know, you can put people in place like managers and others, and peer support and support groups and events and things like that, and even venues, you know, folks can go to that are LGBT plus friendly, and you know, everybody's welcome and you're all safe, but it's people's minds, and I think that's difficulty. I think generationally it will eventually sort itself out, but it's having visibility, and I think that's what events, and you know, even if you get somebody who's prepared to come and say, hi, this is me, this is what I'm about, and have programs like It's a Sin, you know, and seeing people that you kind of think, yeah, that's me. Looking at the police, you know, the police service, looking at the Home Fire and Rescue, looking at the NHS, looking at all organisations, and say, well, actually, the armed forces, there are people in these organisations and in these opportunities, both of education, training and work, that are like you, and they, you know, they're very proud, and they can flourish, and they can do well, and they can succeed just as much. But it's getting that message out to people, and you know, saying, look, there is no threat. It's not a problem, but we're a minority group, and you know, it's just one of those things. You don't choose this. This is you, and you're not wrong, and you're not on your own. And I think that was the message that I took initially, was I felt very much on my own and isolated. And I know even geographically in the East Riding, it's quite a challenge for people, that literally often people do feel like they only gain the village, and you are on your own. And unless, you know, you hear or see of someone else or whatever. But, you know, even I, you know, when I first came out within the NHS was supported, but it was limited. There wasn't a staff network group at the time, but people did have this thing where they would introduce me to another gay person and say, here's Andy, he's gay, here's Paul, he's gay, and then bring them together like two giant pandas, expect it to be fireworks, and that we would go, oh, hello, and it's kind of, well, I'm very pleased to meet you, Paul. What do you? Oh, that's lovely. You're just another person.
Yeah.
Because I'm, you know, my sexuality has been brought up, and actually as I'm going along, I'm realizing that I'm not maybe even as gay as I thought I was. That actually I've got to acknowledge that there was a heterosexual element to me for quite some time. That actually, yes, pansexuality is a thing, and it's certainly more complex than bisexuality, and it's not about being greedy, and it's not about being kind of, oh, tomorrow you'll choose or whatever, and it's not about people in a relationship being suspicious, you know, if I'm with a lady or with a man. It's not that I'm looking for the other. It's about a person, and having somebody that you are interested and attracted to, and you treat each other with respect, and you have a relationship, and what you do within that relationship is your own business. It's nobody else's. And that's always the thing, you know, coming into the college, nobody, you know, we're not talking about anything that's private, you know, it's not, you know, shock horror, you know, it really is just about people being people. It's all about love.
And that is it. And that's something that I've always I've struggled with, not with people, with the fact that other people are just, why don't you like that person because of who they're with, or why don't you, you're just a person. I don't invite you, you know, I don't have conversations with you because I have to tick a box in the week and say, well, I've spoken to somebody that's not straight. I speak to you because you're Andy, you know, and I would speak to you whether you was gay, whether you was straight, no matter who you was in love with, it wouldn't matter to me. And that's something I've always struggled with growing up, is that people are so like almost obsessed with like who you're seeing or what's going on in other people's lives. Like, why can't you just like a person for who they are? And that's something that I do find working in the college. I've noticed, that almost is left at the door. It's like everyone just come in and let's all just get to know each other, and it's not, no one's, the students aren't that interested anymore as they were when I was growing up as to your sexuality or anything. And I do think that's such a positive, and it's a real positive to see, because it was only sort of 10-12 years ago that I was in their shoes, that the difference in that short amount of time is really good. So we are going in a positive direction.
Yeah, we are. I think it's not wanting to, you not wanting to shock horror people, but I think that it does need to move in that direction, and the Equalities Act, and then refining things, and civil partnership into full marriage and all the rest of it, and the fact you can have families, everything is there and up for grabs. But there are still professions, there are still people within the world of, if you say acting, or Hollywood or professional sports, football particularly, where until we can get into those places to say, well, actually, it's not going to harm you in any way, most of them still won't come out until their career is kind of done, which obviously from a footballing sense is relatively young. And it's such a shame, really, that that can't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So just so the students or anybody that's sort of listening to this can sort of take away from it what they want, really. But have you got any sort of local support groups that you can share with us, and just so that people know, and if they want to research them things, then they can in their own sort of time, really?
So many. It's amazing, really. I mean, I usually say, particularly for Hull and East Riding, I mean, the fact we've got the LGBT plus forum, which is an opportunity not just for the community, but also for any organisation, company, service. On a monthly basis, we meet up. At the moment, it's on Zoom, but we usually meet up at the Guildhall second Wednesday of the month, 6:30. It's on Facebook. Search for Hull and East Riding LGBT plus forum. It's there. But also Prides. I mean, I would say instantly, if you go to prideinhull.co.uk, there is a support section. There are lots of organisations locally. For young people, I would definitely say East Riding. I would say Lollipop is a great support for people. I know the college has links with that straight away. They meet on a regular basis. As far as I'm aware, they also have a parents group, which can often be quite a challenge, if you're a parent of a young person, you're trying to find out what you can do to support your child and make sure your family is a good support network, and that's okay. For Hull, there's a shout group. I know that Corner House Yorkshire does have the Step Out group, which is for young people, and there's even a support group for the trans youth. So there's so much. So if you're questioning your gender identity, the support in the area, we've got a group for adults as well from a trans point of view, but also from a sexuality point of view, there are support networks there. Good, safeguarded. Nobody's going to out you. Nobody's going to make you say anything or be anything that you don't want to be. You just need to be your true authentic self, because when you have that kind of pressure on you and you think, I must be careful what I say when people say, what are you doing at the weekend, and you're trying to make it so that you don't identify any genders, or you're with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you don't want anybody to know about this thing. It really, that does affect you mentally. And I think that, with LGBT History Month at the moment being about mind, body and spirit, you've got to look at yourself as a whole person. And even from a faith point of view, we even have a Christian fellowship for LGBT plus people in the area. It's wonderful. And if you don't want support in this area, not a million miles away in York, they've got a fantastic support network there as well. So there's lots of choices and lots of chances to just get support, get help if you need it. I mean, if you find and you're happy and you've got supportive parents and you've got a supportive network and brothers and sisters or whatever and friends, then you're very lucky. But there are a lot of people out there who suffer tremendously, and even Hull and East Yorkshire Mind are very good at providing support.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just about, like you say, it's about being yourself, and everyone should be able to be themselves. And like you've just said, having that much pressure on yourself and having to think about the way that you have a conversation with someone has got to bring you down and cause you mental stress. And if anybody is suffering something, that they can talk to anybody in the college, but they can also, like you say, go on any of these websites and seek some support from somebody that's not gonna, no one's gonna judge you. It's just a safe space. And you know, if anyone does want some more support, you know, if they can email me, get in touch with me, and I can, you know, speak to Andy, and you can have a chat with Andy. But yeah, but we're all here to make sure that everybody's just themselves, really. That's all that anyone can hope to be.
Yeah. Another organisation, luckily, I forgot to mention, is MESMAC. I don't want to forget them because they helped me, and we fought to get them into the area. And I know that it's mainly from a Hull point of view, but things like sexual health are really important, no matter what your gender identity is or sexual orientation. You know, to have a healthy relationship, you do need to sort of, you know, deal with all of those things, as maybe as awkward and as weird as it can be. But all this kind of stuff is out there and it's free, and we'd rather you're in control of that than not.
Absolutely, yes. So something that I do really want to touch on is your triumphs, whether, you know, something that you've given to people, the different jobs that you do, and sort of your key as to how you stay so positive. Because I know that you are, every time you come into college, you know, you've got this just amazing energy about yourself, which everybody, the staff, the students, you know, as soon as I send out an email about the fact that you're coming in or that you've got sessions available, the emails that come flooding in is just like mad. That's so amazing. You know, that energy absolutely seeps out of you. But just, I want to touch on your triumphs and find the positives. You know, we've talked about your struggles and the fact that, you know, it took you a long time to sort of come out, but let's sort of touch on your triumphs, really, Andy.
I think for me, it's feeling therefore I can be myself, and the world that's opened up for me, as far as even like some of the performing things that I do. You know, I mean, some people know me as the living statue of the gold man, and you know, the things that I've you know, been abroad with that and seeing other countries, and you know, I never in a million years thought I would end up going to and performing in Israel or Poland or Hungary or you know, across in Latvia, you know, and Belgium, a statue festival. So I think that it opened up a whole world to me of, if you imagine, and that sounds a bit cliche, but the thing with the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy going from that sepia, that black and white, but not black and white, kind of black and brown kind of like looking old movie, and having that dreadful situation with the tornado and the house being carried away and the whole kind of, you know, thing with the Wicked Witch and all the rest of it. I mean, I've had Wicked Witches in my lives, male and female. And you don't need people who deal with that. And I always say mood hoovers. Get the mood hoovers away from me. I want people who are positive and can do, and kind of think, well, if we can't do that, how can we change that to make it right? And I think that kind of lifted the lid for me and made it like, you know, doing voiceovers, performing, you know, a whole area of work, you know, whether I'm doing training or I'm doing stuff where I'm dressing up often, you know, for those who know of or have ever heard of a character called Mr. Ben, I always say for me, that's kind of been my life, you know, whether I'm doing the music box, you know, or I'm dressed up as, you know, as Darth Vader or whatever I'm doing, you know, there's so many, or even the Fat Controller. I just love, you know, that world. And for me, that has been a triumph to actually experience that and get an equity card and be part of that world. Yeah. But I think to give people or be part of a team that creates opportunities for others, things like Pride and UK Pride for Hull, being the first UK Pride and setting up helping set up the UK Pride network and being part of that world, and literally going to, you know, a conference. I mean, a lot of it's done over the phone and online at the moment, but getting the opportunity to go to places like Saskatoon in Canada and you know, be there with other people from all over the world who are doing prides and having similar kind of situations to us, and some being very, you know, very, very kind of suppressed by governments and organizations in their countries, but meeting them and kind of giving them energy as well. And it's back to what I said earlier, you know, it's about being together and feeling stronger together and being positive and just not feeling that you can't do stuff. And I think, you know, even just kind of directing people simply to an organization where, you know, I treat people like hot potatoes. You know, you're not for me. I will make sure you get to the right people. Yeah. I'm not the sage on the stage. I'm the guide on the side. And that's always been the way I've kind of operated.
Perfect. That's a lovely way of describing it.
Yeah.
So, not to bring the mood down at all, but there is something that obviously we do need to talk about, and you have touched on, the fact that you've had lots of different roles, and I know that you were volunteering in regards to the COVID outbreak and supporting in regards to that. I just sort of wanted to get your view of it, really, because you have been, frontline and you've seen it for what it is, and just sort of a quick discussion on, how you found it and how you sort of found the last year, really.
I think the worst thing, and I think when the chips are down and that everything seems like it's in a mess, and I looked at my diary back in March in 2020 and it kind of emptied as appointments and events, you're not performing as a fat controller, all these different steam railway events where a day out with Thomas was going to happen and you were going to be the fat controller at it, and you've got your costume there all sat ready to go, your top hat and the whole thing and the voice and the whole lot, shave your beard off, you've got to do it properly for the company, and all that's gone, and you kind of think, damn, what am I going to do? And this is before anybody had said, look, you're self-employed, you paid your taxes, here's some support for you. I decided to go for a job where there was help needed, and unfortunately my nursing registration was 13 years out of registration, and it wasn't something that I wanted to necessarily do, was go back to nursing per se, but I had an opportunity to work with Yorkshire Ambulance Service. So I was working outside the emergency department at Hull Infirmary, actually dealing with the COVID as it was coming in, which was very scary to start with. And the proper, when we had the proper, what I call the proper lockdown, the first time around, when people took it really much more seriously and felt that, in hindsight, and I'm not being political here, but I really think that, some of the countries have definitely got it right in that they've gone boom and hard and said, right, we need to deal with this. And if you're going to deal with it, I mean, when I teach first aid and stuff, it's no good shilly-shally and thinking, do we need to deal with this? Do we not? Get in there. There's danger. We've got to deal with it. We've got to make it safe, and we've got to help people. So who knew that I could literally decontaminate and restock and reset up an ambulance in 15 minutes? Who knew that was possible? Between March and the end of August, that was kind of, or beginning of August, that was kind of my job. And it was a paid job, and I was doing 3 days a week, 12-hour shifts. It's while the diary was empty and while I had no work, and particularly because there was interaction, there was positivity, and you had to wear all the PPE and you had to do all the thing. And I said to my colleagues, whatever you wore 2 weeks ago has kept you safe, because you're fine at the moment. We're COVID clear. So just keep on doing it. Keep on washing your hands, wearing the PPE, keeping distance from people, and doing what you've got to do. But it was scary seeing people being brought in private vehicles and literally falling out of those vehicles in such a dreadful state. Many folks being brought in by ambulance and obviously in real need of help, and how that kind of built up. But being part of that rescue, part of that was amazing. And then on regularly, and I've done this all the way through lockdown, is I do a thing in my street where I'm playing music on Facebook Live, and some of the older residents who are nearby. I mean, we know we can't meet together, we know we can't sort of gather in the street or whatever, but they just come out to the end of the street to their doorstep or whatever, and I'd be playing music, and I've ended up calling it movement to music, because it just is to get out there, see, and they'd always go, "Are you all right? You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Are you?" And you're coming out onto your doorstep, you're shouting to your neighbours and your friends, just saying, "Are you all okay?" And just creating something with a bit of fun and a bit of silliness online, and people seeing that on a regular basis. And it's not a job. If you don't want it, that's fine. But it's there, at Andy Train Hull, there it is on Facebook. And finding music on Facebook that isn't going to be muted, because of course things were under license. Obviously music is not, even though I do have a public, performance license that I pay for every year, playing somebody else's music that belongs to them, unless it's live, you won't see it. So finding music on Facebook that's been created by people for Facebook that is free and you can just use and perform and not get muted is a wonderful thing. At the moment, I'm waiting for I'm going through the process of becoming a vaccinator. So using those skills from a nursing point of view, yes, I've still got a little bit of teaching that's happening, and a few kind of online events, and doing a little bit of voiceover work and that kind of thing. But it's not the same as we'd normally do. Being together and at events. So you've just got to keep on going, and you've just got to do what you can. Worry about you. Worry about yourself and what you're doing and the impact you're having on everybody else, rather than kind of thinking, well, somebody else is doing something great, I want to go. You've got to play the game, I'm afraid, because this thing ain't going to go away otherwise. No. And as soon as you can get that jab, get your sleeve rolled up, get that in there, and just got to do our thing, do our bit.
You do, yeah. And just from my perspective, I just want to thank you for everything that you've done, because I know that it must have been really hard, to see all those things that you will have seen, and even you're constantly wanting to sort of excel yourself by doing like the vaccinating thing and all of that. And I think you're amazing. So thank you.
I mean, I know there's stacks of other people, who are just selflessly. I mean, I know people from my neighbourhood who are doing like collecting food for folks and doing shopping, and there's just so many, acts of absolute, just support and love that people have been doing, and folks who, yes, it's their job, doctors, nurses, and otherwise, but my goodness me, they're putting themselves through it at the minute, and it's a real thing. It's really happening, and it's horrible, and you've just got to just think, right, what is my part to play in this?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter how big or small, does it? It's I mean, I know there's an elderly gentleman that lives in my village, and he's like 3 doors down from me, and every time I go to the supermarket, I just get him a paper, and I just have done ever since the first lockdown. But I'm not getting him anything else other than this paper. But the smile that it puts on his face every single time I just pop that paper on his windshield, and the next time he sees me walking the dog, he's like, "Thanks so much." And he's always there trying to give me his 65p or whatever it is, and I'm like, "It's fine. I'll get you a 65p paper. Like, it makes no difference to me." But it makes me feel good, and it makes it just means that he doesn't have to get in his car in the freezing cold and go get a paper. So I'm not doing anything extravagant, but to him I'm doing something really extravagant, because he gets his paper every Friday or whatever I get it for him. So it's not about doing the massive things. No one's expecting you to go and do a nursing degree and get in the hospitals, but it's just about doing something. And even if it's just staying at home, you're doing your bit at it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And just ringing around your friends and just checking in on people, or just sending a message and just say, and we found this in the LGBT plus community, that we haven't got venues to go to. So where you'd say, let's all meet in Propaganda, let's all meet in the Star. I mean, obviously we're talking about licensed premises here, but, but even just gathering in a group, and even just meeting somebody, and it's really, really difficult, but, we are going to get there. And although you feel like you kind of, is there any end to this thing? It will finish. We'll eventually go back to normal. It won't be like that overnight, but it will slowly but surely turn around, and we'll be back and together.
We will, and like you said earlier, we're stronger together, aren't we? So we all need to pull together, and we'll, like you say, we'll get through this. So just to finish, I would like your top tip for anyone who is struggling.
Top tip. Yeah, just your top tip. I sort of end all my podcasts on asking everybody for their top tip on whatever we were talking about. So your top tip for anyone that might be struggling. I think for me is just to get outside. I know we're allowed a certain amount, allowed an hour to exercise officially, and allowed to go and buy essentials and stuff. But I think for me, there's been some days where I've known I've not had anything to do. Or whatever, or the weather's been bad, or whatever it might be. I think just, even though you don't feel like you want to do it. I mean, I've started couch to 5k, and there's been days where you just kind of like try and persuade yourself, even without COVID, I'd probably be sat there trying to persuade myself, no, you don't go out today, it's wet, or whatever. But I think I've always felt better for just getting out into the world. And yes, you've got your face covering, you've washed your hands, you're gelling, you're doing all the things you're meant to do, you're keeping distance from people, but just get out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and you've been super as always. And the students can obviously just look out for you. We're doing some live tutorial sessions, so your tutors might have booked you in for that, so the students can look out for you for there. But if ever, you know, they can all follow your Facebook page, because I know that I enjoy watching you stood outside in the rain with an umbrella trying to turn a music box. It always makes me laugh. Who says men can't multitask?
Crazy days. Teeny boxes on. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, everything on. I'll just love it. It's great. But thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Real pleasure. Thank you.
See you later.
See you later.